at the end of the day, the message is you have to find a way of taking care of your body that works for you. And that when you start with acceptance of your current body as it is right now, by starting with acceptance, then you're opening the door to self-love and self-compassion, which is better going to set you up for the kinds of body kindness and self-care choices that are in line with the kind of person you want to be. And the weight becomes less of a goal and more of something that you observe. If your body is meant to weigh less and maintain that lower weight, then it will do that without you having to be rigid for the rest of your life.
Hey, I'm Scott Jones from eMeals, and you're listening to Real Food for Real Life. On this episode, I talk with registered dietitian nutritionist Rebecca Scritchfield, who's the author of the best-selling book, Body Kindness. Rebecca explains how she went from hitting what she calls diet rock bottom to transforming her health from the inside out, and how she learned to never say diet again. Now, before we get to the interview, I have a few housekeeping items. First, send us your questions and comments. We read all of them. And if you have a suggestion for a future guest or a potential topic, I'd love to know that too. You can find us on Twitter at eMeals using the hashtag AskEmeals. We also have an email address. It's community@emeals.com. If you don't already subscribe to our podcast, subscribe today. It's simple to do. You can find us at itunes.com/podcast/Real Food for Real Life. And while you're there, leave us a review. And finally, if you'd like more information on eMeals and our variety of meal plan food styles, you can find us at emeals.com. Try any of our meal plans free for 2 weeks, be it paleo, clean eating, or gluten-free. You can even have your shopping list sent directly to Walmart pickup at no charge, so your groceries are waiting for you. That's it. On with the show. Hey there, Rebecca. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Welcome to Real Food for Real Life. Hope we're catching you at a good time.
Yes, it is a nice day here in Washington, D.C., and I'm just enjoying the afternoon.
Fantastic. Well, we have so much to talk about. I really enjoyed reading your book, Body Kindness, and we're definitely going to dive into a number of topics. But before we get started, help us understand how you got to actually writing the book. I realize you have a brand built around body kindness, but what prompted you to actually put all of this down in a book?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I will always tell people when we get into conversations around the book that I wrote it to help myself first. And then I'm just so glad that it's out there in the world and really making a difference in people's lives and truly helping them kind of shift their focus more toward about well-being, and redefine health. For me, it actually came from hitting what I now refer to as diet rock bottom. So
I'm sure many of us have been there more than once.
Well, it's hard not to, because our culture today very much, aligns dieting and perfect eating behavior, perfect exercise behavior. They kind of hijack health and say, oh, well, this is health. And then it basically is scary to the rest of us who are just trying to do good, take care of ourselves, take care of our families. It's almost like we're never good enough. And that is really something that I grew up receiving those messages, and nobody's really immune. From the time of around 1, we absorb messages from, yes, our family and friends and in the school, but our culture at large. So what do we see on television? What do we see in the commercials? What are we reading in the magazines? And, dieting is a very, $50+ billion a year industry that really thrives off of are, if as long as we feel inadequate, then we need to buy what they're selling. And so much so that it's produced as this is what you should do to be healthy, trying to make us think that, if you have, a larger body, and that is usually what we see genetic, people have a larger bone structure, and they may have a higher body fat percent, and that, automatically, unless we meet this thin ideal, that, that they somehow know that we're unhealthy. And anyway, long story short, I bought into all the messages. I really started dieting as a way to, quote, take care of my body. I thought that was what you needed to do. I even tried some diets with my mom, and I write about that in the book. And, my mom and I, we love each other very deeply, and we've had hard conversations about our path. And she very much regrets that her dieting past, but also the impact that it had on me as well. And something else that was also very, very twisted was that I was often congratulated for my good habits, and congratulated based on my appearance, but really on the inside, I was suffering, and that inner critic was really growing. And it would take me, I was even working as a registered dietitian, as an exercise physiologist. I was giving clients diets. Literally part of the problem, saying, I'm going to monitor you. Before there were Fitbits, I had found this other clinical monitor and put them on their arms, and, we're going to track every calorie. Just everything that I found so harmful and repulsive. Now I was part of that system, and my rock bottom came, in several different ways. One thing was my mom's health took a turn for the worse. And when we really went deep into the problems, at the root of it was her weight cycling through dieting throughout her life.
Yeah.
The second thing is, for me, I was, I was doing my dietitian and trainer thing. I was running marathons and doing like South Beach diet. So it was like lower carb. All I wanted was strawberries, and I couldn't have them. So I'd eat a whole thing of ricotta cheese. And so I'd restrict, and then, overeat. And sometimes they were, it was like a binge behavior, right? Because it would be one thing and the next and the next. And I learned to soothe with food, and then I'd feel so guilty that I'd try that next diet again. And but that day when I hit the bottom of the ricotta container, and I was like, this is insane. All I really wanted was some strawberries, but because I'm on, the week 1, no sugar, I can't have it. And I said, I've got to really find something different. And what I ended up finding was Intuitive Eating, which is a book that was co-written by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, and they're both registered dietitians, and they're really ahead of their time in what they put out. There are these principles of this way of eating where you don't have to diet, and that changed everything for me. I ended up doing supervision under them, which means you read the book and you consult with them on client cases, and I basically realized that I was causing harm in my client's life. Yeah. And I did not know that, but I no longer felt good about taking their hard-earned money and their trust and sabotaging it. So I just said, what can I do to help people truly improve their health without dieting? And it led to a long study in things like positive psychology, health at every size principles, and what that meant. And just truly re-engineering, okay, this is what you do if you don't diet. And then that ended up becoming the book Body Kindness, which, in the subtitle, I say, never say diet again. And that's truly my goal, that if you, on the one hand, you really do want to improve your habits, or you really do want to take good care of yourself, you want to fight that inner critic, find a caregiver, right? But on the other hand, you still care about your health and well-being. People can feel really lost. And so for me, the book answers that question and gives you practical, doable advice, with activities throughout. So it's kind of part book, part workbook. And many people who read it and who give a review say, it's the kind of thing that you read through and then you go through and do the exercises, and you're going to pick it back up because you're going to use this as you work on learning and growing and changing.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say is you want to be part of the cure, if you will, that helps people not just look at the test for success being totally external, but it's the internal part is just as important, because I think about that often. We have so many people that use our meal plans, various food styles, to help them achieve a healthy lifestyle, whether it's to, meet a weight goal or, train for something. But, I think about what you just said, and we're so bombarded by all these external marketing and advertising and, food manufacturers. How do you advise someone? Do they need an accountability partner to go through this? Because you're kind of, you're fighting this battle. It seems like nonstop.
Well, the thing of it is, I've experienced this myself, and I hear this from people all the time. It's like the more you become aware of diet culture and how it works to keep your body oppressed, and it's like you can't unsee it. So once your eyes are open, there's nothing you could do to sort of unsee this negative, harmful message. And it does hurt to see that. And then it becomes, the universal body kindness question is, does this create a better life?
Right.
So, I'll just use one example. Yoga was something that for me really helped me heal my body image. It was a foundational part in what helped me discover self-compassion. I think it was the beginnings of me finding a caregiver voice. And it came into my life when I really needed it, and so much so that I wanted to immerse myself in yoga. And that's all I did for movement for 5 years. And then I could go back to running and strength training and doing other things. And yoga is a part of what I do now. And I feel the whole way I do exercise has been reframed. But, I'm scrolling on social media and I see this sponsored ad, and it has it's a female that visibly looks very low body fat, bulging muscles, in a bikini,
sure,
like leg over her head on one arm.
Yeah.
And there was this message that said, stay strong and youthful in 20 minutes a day. And I just look, and it's like, I can't unsee that, like bulging muscles, bikini clad, strong and useful. And it's like, we hold up these images that a vast majority of the people would never be able to maintain because it's genetics. And those images do harm. So when people are working on body kindness, a very important part is to ask, does this create a better life?
Yeah.
So as soon as you're aware that the messages that you take in could be causing harm, you may decide you need to take a break from social media, and that you find some time to get some positive movement in that way. One of the things I recommend in the book is called Shirin Yoku, which is forest bathing. And it basically means go find some woods, find a park, and just walk around and be in nature, and notice how you feel. And that's movement, and that's good for your body. And that's something that can help you feel a positive connection. So, it may be that you need to look at who you're following and the newsletters you're reading. What are you consuming? And try to surround yourself by more messages that are respectful of size diversity and more focused on well-being as opposed to judgments. And I do want to address, just because you mentioned about, marketing and this and that, I really do think that first of all, there is a major shift toward body positivity. I think marketers and advertisers are going to have to figure that out. But I think there's an amazing potential to understand that there is a way to help truly enhance health and well-being, and, represent, a variety of sizes, people of color, gender identities, right? And that you can actually connect with your consumer through inclusivity and positive and empowering messages that I believe is where we're going culturally and is a very important part about helping to continue this shift toward well-being and away from body oppression.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I feel like I've seen more of that for adults, but as the father of two girls, I definitely do not see that in the stuff that they're consuming. Not so much the diversity part, but the body image and them striving for perfection, or what they assume is what the perfect body type should be. And it occurs to me, as you were just talking about some of those tools, especially around mindfulness, and gosh, wouldn't we all love to be able to just take a walk in the woods and just decompress and just chill out for a little bit. But one of the things you say in your book is how diets can be so stressful. And stress, we know, is one of the things that kills us. I mean, there's so much science behind the damage physiologically that stress does. And I suspect that most people would not associate stress with diets. But then I think about, some of my friends who have been on diets, and you ask them about, hey, have you had, X or Y kind of food? And they're like, no, I'm on a diet, get out of my face. And I'm like, gosh, that's not the picture of calm. But I mean, I until I read your book, I really, honestly, it's intuitive, but I'd never really heard anyone's talk, say that out loud, that there's a lot of stress that's associated with diets and this attaining this certain end goal, or these certain requirements that some diets have, and just how taxing that can be physically and emotionally.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. That's exactly what I was going to point out, is that there are two primary sources, psychological and biological stress. So from the biological standpoint, I mean, we got to go evolution, right? I mean, thankfully, we're here because our ancestors were afraid of lions and tigers and everything, and so hid from them appropriately. But they also knew how to find food and get enough food and store enough body fat to make it through famines. And that is part of our DNA. So thankfully, our bodies work, right? So that when we cut calories, when we don't get enough nutrients and something like carbohydrates, I mean, that is the fuel for our brain. Right. So I'm not saying, hey, you want the healthiest thing you could do, families, go out and, eat 4 slices of pizza on the sofa with your feet up, it's like that, I think people get this vision of what non-dieting looks like, like I'm not saying don't, just kind of do nothing, that there is this alternative that is grounded in mindfulness, right? And that won't trigger that biological deprivation. And so, one of the ways that it works to help you maintain your set point is it will send signals to think about food, to focus on food, especially carbohydrates and sugar if you're not getting enough nourishment. So that's one of the ways it's stressful, because it increases your anxiety about food. It increases your interest and your thoughts around food. And I've even seen with clients who end up developing eating disorders, which are mental health issues. And something a lot of people don't understand is that eating disorders are actually the most deadly of the mental health issues, that they could spend over 100% of their hours thinking about food and worrying about food, because they even dream about food. So they have even anxiety about food in their sleep.
So they're just ruminating on this constantly.
Exactly. And it's fear, right? It engages their fear response, which we have, right? Again, for survival, and we could be grateful for that. We want to look both ways when we cross the streets, and we want to know that when we answer the door that we'd be ready, if it wasn't the mail carrier and it was somebody who was there to harm us, that we could engage in that fight, flight, or flee response. But it also can be a negative when it increases our thoughts and our anxiety. And it kind of reminds me of when you were talking about your friend that was like, I can't have that, I'm on a diet.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was talking about. And so that's, so there's a psychological and a biological component. And then the other thing that will happen is, and I always acknowledge, look, we can get people to lose weight, right? Like your body has a way of saying, okay, let me shut off this thing, let me shut off that thing, to try to live. But the problem is the weight loss doesn't usually last for the vast majority of people. And one of the reasons why that happens biologically, that is literally outside of human control, it occurs in our brain and it's outside of our control, it has to do with a hormonal response. So after weight loss, there are two problematic things that happen. One is that we have reduced circulating leptin, which is a hormone that says, hey, I'm full, I don't need any food right now. So with less leptin, we are hungrier. So we eat more and we end up regaining some of that initial weight that we lost. The challenge is that even as you weight restore, what they're finding is that leptin can increase, but it doesn't necessarily increase to the pre-diet level. So that ends up having you more hungry than before you started the diet. And then they also are finding in studies in humans, and this is out of the NIH, they're finding that people also have a metabolic adaptation, meaning that when they're losing weight, not only they're losing body fat, but muscle mass as well. And so that even when they start to regain, that their metabolism doesn't necessarily go back to pre-diet levels. So even now that they're a higher weight, their metabolism isn't necessarily as high as it was before the diet. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just, I think that the most important message that I can explain, because plenty of people have weight concerns, plenty of people, whether it's a scenario of I went through a stressful time in life and, gain weight, or post-pregnancy, aging. I mean, I still have plenty of people who come to see me with weight concerns. At the end of the day, the message is you have to find a way of taking care of your body that works for you. And that when you start with acceptance of your current body as it is right now, even if you want it to change and you're hoping it will change, by starting with acceptance, then you're opening the door to self-love and self-compassion, which is better going to set you up for the kinds of body kindness and self-care choices that are in line with the kind of person you want to be. So instead of like counting every calorie and fearing everything, you're learning how to make better choices. And the weight becomes less of a goal and more of something that you observe. If your body is meant to weigh less and maintain that lower weight, then it will do that without you having to be rigid for the rest of your life. And that's the message I want people to understand, that we know scientifically that we have a set point range. So it's not me sitting here saying no one could ever lose weight no matter what whatsoever, just give up on it. It's more like we have plenty of evidence that diets don't work for us psychologically, biologically. They can lead to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and weight gain. There was a very important study that showed the more times a person diets, the higher their body mass index is likely to climb. Wow. So yeah, it's crazy. So it's like if you wouldn't go to a doctor and who said, here, take this pill, but I guarantee you it won't work. If you wouldn't take that pill, then stop the dieting, stop that sort of harmful, negative self-talk. Instead, start with compassion, start with kindness, and then really take stock of your life and your decision-making and how you spend your time, right? That's a big thing. It's a big part. There's a whole section in body kindness around planning and goal setting, because time is a limited resource. And you may find that you need more time to do the things that are most important. And that may also mean not doing every little thing. I should do this, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that. You're going to get overwhelmed with too much and your brain won't be able to handle that. But, to better manage your time so that you're more likely to take action on your goals, and then you build consistency from there, and then you get to habits, and you really can get to a better life, a happier life, a healthier life. I just can't guarantee what that number on the scale or what the size number in the clothing is going to be.
Right.
And then if you truly care about your own well-being, you will be willing to take that step, and start with kindness and just let go of those demands. They might be in your mind, but culture put them there. Yeah. None of us were born, does this diaper make my butt look big, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you were just saying about, I should have done this, I should have done that. I have a friend of mine who is very perceptive when people start a lot of that negative self-talk. And she will say, you should stop shooting on yourself. And when you hear it that way, of course you do a double take because you're not exactly sure what she said, but it does make you stop to think about all the things that are coming out of your mouth, related to just the intense beating up on yourself that you're doing. Rebecca, I do want to say we've been talking about a lot of wonderful things, and this information you're sharing is valuable and important. A lot of it is very philosophical at this point. So I would say this is kind of where the rubber meets the road kind of moment.
Sure.
I'll say, put you on the spot a little bit as a busy mom, and we know that there are busy moms and dads that are listening to this podcast who are sitting there nodding their head going, she is talking about me, she's speaking to me, but, how do I feed my family, on Tuesday night when everyone's running crazy and I don't want to feed them fast food and I want to be able to have that balance? And what are some of the practical things that you are able to identify in your life that, and also in the book that you think would be helpful for our listeners?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to get into the practicality. I think a foundation is go easy on yourself. Okay. So this idea of if we can, stop the perfectionism, let yourself get help. You don't have to cook everything yourself from scratch, right? Get help so that at least the family dinners are easier, right?
Right. Sure.
Find what people like in your family for breakfast that, is doable. It can be grab and go. There are plenty of options now that, offer good taste and good nutrition. And so, let the easy stuff around meal planning be easy, and then get help with some of the stuff that you find the most challenging. So I definitely encourage, to give yourself a break. You don't have to love to cook, but you can still care about providing your family balanced, nutritious meals, and make it as easy on yourself as possible. Down to the practical of what do I decide to serve? I highly recommend that you focus on balance. So in a family, it's your job as a parent to decide what foods come into the house, right? So, you can involve your family members on, hey, let's list some of our favorite fruits. Let's list some of our favorite vegetables. Keep giving them exposure to, a variety of foods that offer good energy, what we'd call good nutrition, right? What you're thinking, what you're thinking if you're going to give yourself an A+ in health and nutrition, all those, foods that you're thinking of, fruits, veggies, beans, seeds, nuts. I mean, of course they're, that's part of what you're eating. You want to avoid being a food police. So if you don't offer opportunities for desserts or just the things that are part of, our culture that I don't want to see go away. Yeah. So whether it's, I feel grateful I can go to the store and just buy ice cream or, potato chips or something. And you don't have to have a junk food house, right? But you don't have to have it so that none of those foods are around, because you'll end up with kids who overdo it when they're around those other foods. It's better to stop the judgment of good versus bad. And instead, as a parent, you decide what you're putting on the table. And so you decide how often you're going to offer desserts. And you don't say, this is all you get, because that all comes from fear. And you're going to unleash a rebel in your child, no matter the age, that is either going to cry if they're younger, like my 5-year-old would cry, and that's not really going to teach them how to associate feeling good and food tasting good and their body feeling good, which is what you want to go with.
Yeah.
So get those foods into the house, balance on the plate, so that at meals you aim to offer some type of vegetable, some type of fruit, some type of food that delivers lean protein. I encourage use a little bit of butter and or salt or whatnot to help the veggies taste good, because kids might not love the plain raw veggies, have little condiment type things where they can figure out the taste that's going to work for them. But we know that things kids like things a little sweeter. If you roast veggies with some honey, that is going to help improve their palatability. It will be one giant experiment. But you consistently offer those wholesome foods and strive for balance. And I have to tell myself this all the time, when I have a night where my kids don't take the veggies or don't eat as much as I wanted them, to not turn it into a food fight, that you've got to trust that they're in charge of their body. They're in charge of, what they're interested in eating and how full they already feel, and that's going to change day to day. And that, you can certainly offer windows of hey, this is the time to eat because we're not eating after dinner, and their appetite will regulate around that. But, kind of negotiating, you better eat this or that, is really not going to work long term. And I find that actually leads to a lot of stress and anxiety on the parent side. So hopefully those are some basic, guidelines. You've got to realize that for the number of meals that you're going to eat in your lifetime, it's literally hundreds of thousands. So if most of the meals you're offering variety and balance, you're thinking about nutrition, we don't have to have all this guilt and shame around things like pizza night or, having sour cream on taco night or something. It's about overall patterns.
Yeah. And what would you say to this, Rebecca? I know I see this in my own family and around my other friends who have kids who are in junior high and high school. They are eating lunch, practically at, and still in the morning. I mean, they're all eating lunch basically. Yeah. And so they get home from school, they're starving. It's not really practical for them to wait until dinner to eat. And their bodies are growing, they need energy. You want their brains to be fueled. How do you deal with that? Both as a mom and as a nutrition expert. I mean, what are you telling other moms and dads out there? When maybe a lot of these kids are coming home and, they're kind of having to get a snack for themselves or whatever.
Sure.
What's that strategy to keep them getting fueled properly and not having them, destroy an entire bag of, potato chips?
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of snacking, and it does go back to the idea of you never know when they're, going to start their growth spurt or what their appetite was around lunch or how they might have got rushed through it, how early it was, all those different factors. At the end of the day, if you're teaching your kids to trust their bodies and trust their hunger, you can work with them, right? This could be a fun weekend activity, and depending on age ranges, I would say for the younger kids, maybe up until middle school time, talk about, hey, let's make a fun snack menu. What are some of your favorite snacks? And, let them help brainstorm, let them say something like, I really like Nutella or something. And, that part of you might be like, the chocolate sugary thing, make space for everything. It's okay no matter what. Just have a discussion. In your mind, you could be thinking about balance. So you could guide a conversation toward fruit or vegetables. You could think about how that might sound balanced. So one example might be if they talk about liking peanut butter. Oh, great. How about we try that with some celery and apples one time? What are some other ways we could try it? And so I would set aside that brainstorm time. Include things that are also maybe more of a convenience for you that they also enjoy. But what you can do when it goes to the actual snacking, I would say, I guess I'm assuming kind of parents are around to guide. In that case, you might have, these are the 3 snack options for this week, and Monday they choose between the snack, and then say they want the same thing on Tuesday and it's kind of like the cookie again. As a parent, you can say something, hey, you know what, cookies aren't on the menu today. They might be back tomorrow. What, of the menu items of these 2 things, which one interests you? Mm-hmm. So again, like, you're not policing, but you're also encouraging them to find a sense of balance. And it's a structure that gives them a sense of choice and autonomy. And even though they realize, they're a little bit sad not about the cookie, that they really can enjoy something like that apple and peanut butter, with maybe a few chocolate chips or something like that. And so, it can be more of a collaborative way of working together. And I would say, if you're not at home, and assuming they don't have a caregiver who could serve this role, which I highly recommend you train and coach your caregivers. But if they're alone, I think by that age where they're alone, you've kind of taught them that structure around choices. And if you're having a real difficulty where you don't really think that they're kind of always kind of doing what they want, sort of that rebel, and you have concerns about their health and well-being based on their patterns, think about the big picture. And then in that, it's going to probably be kind of a heart-to-heart conversation, because they do have more independence, and you're going to want to more drive home this idea of that you care about their well-being, and that, you'd like to have a conversation about ways that they could eat a bit more balanced but still enjoy foods that they like, and see what they say about it. And because what you want to do is try to align on that. And if you have a good overall relationship, I think they'll be open to that idea that you're not trying to control them. You're not trying to shove carrot sticks down their throat. But they can actually be part of the solution. And when you come to an agreement with them, then what they can do is then you can hold them accountable to their agreement. Hey, remember, we talked about snacking and we had this agreement. I wanted to remind you of that agreement, and let's talk about it again. How do you think you're doing?
Yeah, boy, that's great. In fact, I'm going to have to think of what my next question was going to be, because I'm so busy writing notes here. I stopped being the person doing the interview and was actually a listener here. So, but that's terrific stuff. Before, I know we're getting close to our time here, but before we end, I do want to talk about 2 more things that you bring up in your book, which are, to me, are critical things that often get lost in this conversation. One of those is sleep. The other is exercise. And exercise, I think we would all say, we know about exercise, but the way that you come at it, which is not about achieving a certain weight, but actually getting active and looking at it more holistically. So tell us a little bit about how you layer in kind of that, exercise, movement, and then the importance of sleep, or importance of both, actually, as it relates to that overall, kindness to your body.
Sure. Let's just start with sleep. I mean, hands down, we are in a major sleep deficit in America. And, that is a symptom of many, many problems: being overworked, the commute time that we face, social media, and that always on mindset. And sleep has a direct impact on how your body functions biologically. So as little as one night of not enough sleep, you don't get the time to create optimal levels of your hormones that regulate your appetite. So I mentioned leptin earlier, and the other one is ghrelin.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically normalize on the last couple hours of sleep. So, the key is fixing your sleep, and then you're probably not going to be relying to stay awake on coffee or sugary donuts or all these other things that you end up doing. Your body's working, it's saying, give me energy. And really your cells are truly sleep deprived. So, I have there's a whole chapter in the book on sleep. I think for the purposes of the conversation, understanding that this is going to be something that you need to fix if you want to improve your decision-making ability. Not enough sleep is like being drunk and trying to drive a car. So if you wouldn't do that, go in. The simplest thing I could offer people is, on average, people need 8 hours. If you wanted to start with that, put in what time you needed to wake up in the morning, and then count backwards 8 hours from there, then count backwards another hour, because that's when you should actually be in bed without the screens that are going to keep you up at night or any major distractions, like literally read a book, read a magazine, something that will help your body self-regulate into sleep. And then count out an hour before that. That's done with technology no matter what, have to pick it up tomorrow. And you start the winding down process with your family, with yourself, so that toward the tail end of that hour, you're working in your bedtime routine, and take a moment to feel good. Some deep breaths, simple hygiene of washing your face and brushing your teeth, making that part of your routine. You might want to settle in with a cup of hot water with a little lemon or some sort of herbal tea, no caffeine at all, but just something that feels like you're easing in. You'll start to crave this, and you'll realize how much better you function on sleep. It really will impact your daytime energy, whether that's for thinking and concentrating to be creative at work, the energy for exercise, the energy to keep up with a busy family. So I really can't say enough about how important it is. There is some variability on how much sleep people require in order to be optimal, but most people aren't getting enough, and they're lying awake at night, and they have trouble either falling asleep or staying asleep. I would put your personal attention on that. And if you can't resolve it on your own, there are professionals that can help with sleep. And I would highly encourage you to do that, because it's very, very difficult to thrive without good enough sleep.
And Rebecca, if someone were interested in getting some of that professional help with sleep, who do they seek out?
Sure. So when I have worked with clients, the first path has been working on getting a sleep study. You may talk to your doctor about it. It's great if doctor services don't require a visit. And that you could call and explain what's going on. You might be able to get a referral without, sort of more quickly, because sometimes you're waiting to see the doctor. But there are sleep centers that do studies, and so you have experts that are evaluating. So that would be kind of after you've tried all this stuff on your own and you have concerns that something else may be going on besides your own behavior. And so those could be roads, as well as if you are making an appointment with a therapist who's done an evaluation and is seeing things like anxiety and depression, they're going to be checking in on your sleep as well.
Got it. And then finally on fitness, help us understand the positive part of fitness, where it's really about using your body the way it was intended to be used, about moving, and not necessarily about standing on the scale every day to look at, did I lose another quarter of a pound?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a total reframe. I would encourage everyone to just think about your beliefs about exercise that aren't necessarily helpful. We know scientifically that exercise alone is a poor form of weight control, because when we exercise, we get hungrier. So it's just kind of part of those equations. This, stat usually surprises people. Physical inactivity has been associated with 14% of the risk for death related to chronic diseases. And obesity, which is usually what we hear about, obesity is only 2%. So the message, I know.
That's huge.
Right. So the message really is move your body. It is absolutely important. And I even say in the book, your body's meant to move every day. I actually caught a little bit of flack from that for some people. Toward the end, I talk about some people need a break from movement because they're doing it too much or for the wrong reasons. And if hearing take a break, sounds bad, you probably need to take a break. But, there was a limited space in the book and really I wanted to write toward the idea that on average, we're getting about 17 minutes of movement a day, and it isn't enough. But how can we be aware of that knowledge? So if that sounds like you're not getting enough, you're not into routine. If that sounds like you, then yes, we could be doing more, but a lot of it has to do with the motivation behind. So when we believe the myth that it's going to change our appearance or we're going to magically look like, again, the thin ideal, it's not likely to be motivating. Exercise has been shown to improve body image, but only when you perceive that you're getting benefits out of exercise related to, like, wow, I feel stronger, wow, I feel better. And it's those endorphins, right?
Yeah. So real tangible benefits, not the perceived things that you may or may not see in the mirror.
Right. And you just have to totally personally reframe it. Why am I moving? And how is it going to benefit me? And if and again, like you'll still probably be congratulated or even if your body does change, somebody's going to say, hey, you look better. What are you doing? It's like, take a deep breath, frame it. Thanks. I feel a lot better. I've been exercising and I feel better. There's nothing wrong with that type of response, but reframing it to your feeling and, just something other than appearance. And, it's just really important to do that because you're no longer approaching exercise from a place of scarcity and not good enoughness. And instead it's more from that caregiver voice. This is part of how I take care of myself. It's important to me. And that means even sometimes I'll feel tired, but I will choose to do something to move my body because my body needs it like a vitamin. And that's something I value. And you just really change the mindset away from punishment. It's a very, very important part of body kindness.
Man, that's so important for all of us to hear. And I so appreciate you sharing that, Rebecca. And again, for all the listeners out there, Rebecca's book is Body Kindness. I will have links in the show notes to Rebecca's website and to all of her other resources. But Rebecca, thanks so much for hanging out with us. And I really wish you the best of luck with the success of this book. And hopefully we'll see more stuff from you in the near future.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
You've been listening to Real Food for Real Life. Subscribe today and you'll never miss another episode. You'll also have access to past episodes with terrific guests ranging from cookbook authors to paleo experts, clean eating experts to fitness pros. You can find us at itunes.com/podcast/Real Food for Real Life. And when you subscribe, be sure to leave us a review. You can also find us on other popular podcast apps like Stitcher and Google Play Music. If you have questions about this episode or our podcast, feel free to email me at community@emeals.com, or you can tweet them to me at emeals using the hashtag #AskEmeals. To get more information on emeals and our variety of meal plans, visit us at emeals.com. Until next time, I'm Scott Jones. Thanks for listening.